The laboratory aboard the research vessel Harmony hummed with quiet efficiency as Dr. Kira Lane prepared the final sample from Earth. Her hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting the molecular scanner one last time before beginning the deep structure analysis that would map humanity's genetic blueprint down to its most fundamental components. Around her, representatives from 17 different species watched in respectful silence. The Galactic Scientific Council had convened this unprecedented gathering to create the most comprehensive genetic database in known history. Each species had contributed their biological essence to the project, hoping to unlock the mysteries of evolution across the stars. "Beginning human genetic analysis," Kira announced, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The scanner whirred to life, its crystalline core casting dancing shadows across the walls as it began its work. Elder Vex, the lead researcher from the aquatic tidal worlds, floated closer in his environmental suit. "Your species' contribution completes our collection, Dr. Lane. Soon we will understand the great tapestry of life that connects us all." Kira nodded, watching as streams of data began flowing across her displays. The human genome unfolded in all its complexity, 4 billion base pairs revealing their secrets in cascading waves of information. But as the analysis deepened, something unexpected began to emerge. The first anomaly appeared in the junk DNA, those supposedly useless sequences that comprised nearly 90% of the human genome. The scanner highlighted patterns that shouldn't exist, mathematical sequences that spoke of deliberate design rather than random evolution. "That's curious," muttered Dr. Finn, the tall, ethereal researcher from the crystal moon of Prism. His multifaceted eyes caught the light as he leaned forward. "The structural algorithms are incredibly sophisticated." Then the secondary analysis completed, and the room fell silent. Every screen in the laboratory displayed the same impossible truth. The human genetic code contained fragments, perfect, undamaged fragments of every other species in the room. Not similar sequences that might suggest common ancestry, but exact matches down to the individual nucleotide. "Run it again," whispered Dr. Kira, her scientific mind refusing to accept what her eyes were showing her. The results didn't change. Hidden within humanity's genetic structure lay the blueprints for the bioluminescent scales of the deep void swimmers, the crystalline neural networks of the prism dwellers, the adaptive cellular structures of the shape-shifting flux beings. Everything was there, dormant but intact, waiting. Elder Vex's breathing apparatus bubbled frantically. "This is impossible. Our species evolved on worlds separated by thousands of light years. We've never shared evolutionary paths." But Dr. Moss, the ancient tree-like being from the forest world of Gaia Prime, spoke with a voice like rustling leaves. "Unless..." His bark-covered features creased in what might have been wonder or fear. "Unless one of us came first." The implication hung in the air like a live wire. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. Kira's hands trembled as she initiated the final scan, the one that would trace the genetic timeline, revealing which sequences were original and which were derivatives. The machine processed for what felt like hours, but was only minutes, and when it finished, the truth blazed across every screen in the room. Human DNA wasn't just similar to the others. It was the source code from which all the others had been written. The silence in the laboratory stretched until Dr. Moss finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "Your species is the genetic ancestor of every sentient being in this room." Kira stared at the data, her mind racing through implications that seemed to rewrite everything they knew about galactic civilization. "That's impossible. Humans only. Achieved spaceflight within the last century." We're the newest species to join the Galactic Council. But not the newest to exist, Elder Vex observed, his aquatic form rippling with agitation. Dr. Lane, what is your species' understanding of your own evolutionary timeline? We trace our development back roughly 300,000 years. On Earth, Kira replied, pulling up the relevant data. Before that, our ancestral lines stretch back millions of years, but those were earlier hominid species. Dr. Finn's crystalline structure chimed softly, his species equivalent of thoughtful. Humming. Our oldest archaeological evidence places the first prism settlements at approximately 250,000 years ago. We always believed we were among the eldest of the current galactic civilizations. Similar murmurs arose from the other researchers as they compared their species' histories. The flux beings had records going back 200,000 years. The deep void swimmers claimed 180,000. Every species in the room had emerged after humanity's genetic lineage had already been established on Earth. But how is this possible? Demanded Dr. Nex, the insectoid researcher whose hive mind species had contributed some of the most sophisticated biotechnology in the galaxy. If humans are our genetic progenitors, why do you show no knowledge of seeding other worlds? Why no record of interstellar travel in your ancient past? Kira was about to respond when her scanner chimed with an incoming priority message. The communication came from Earth's Deep Space Archaeological Survey, a project that had been quietly excavating anomalous sites around the globe for the past decade. Dr. Lane, came the voice of her colleague, Dr. Vale, crackling through the subspace connection. You need to see what we found. We've uncovered structures beneath the Antarctic ice shelf. The dating is, well, it's impossible, but we've confirmed it through 6 different methods. What kind of structures? Kira asked, though she felt she already knew the answer would change everything. Launch platforms, Dr. Lane, massive ones. The design is unlike anything in our historical record, but the technology ... It's clearly human in origin, and they're old. Very old. We're talking about installations that predate recorded human civilization by over 250,000 years. The laboratory erupted in excited chatter as the various species representatives processed this revelation. But Dr. Moss raised one of his massive branch-like arms, calling for silence. There is another question we must ask, he said slowly. If ancient humans possessed the technology to seed worlds across the galaxy, what happened to them? Why did your species forget its own legacy? Kira felt a chill run down her spine as she considered the possibilities. A civilization advanced enough to travel between stars, to plant the seeds of life on distant worlds, didn't simply disappear without leaving more traces. Unless something had forced them to abandon their technology, to hide their achievements, to start over. We need to access the restricted genetic archives, she said suddenly. The sequences that every species flags as evolutionary dead ends or junk mutations. If ancient humans were seeding the galaxy, they might have left messages in the genetic code itself. The assembled researchers exchanged glances. The restricted archives contained genetic sequences that had been deemed too dangerous or unstable to study. Patterns that could potentially rewrite a species' fundamental biology if mishandled. That would require unanimous consent from all council members, Elder Vex noted. Then we get it, Kira said with determination. Because if we're right, those archives don't contain dead ends. They contain humanity's gift to the galaxy, and possibly the key to understanding why we forgot we ever gave it. The vote was unanimous, though it took 3 days of heated debate across 17 different worlds. When the restricted genetic archives finally opened, the assembled researchers found themselves staring at patterns that defied conventional understanding of biology. These aren't random mutations, Dr. Finn observed, his crystalline form refracting. The data streams into rainbow cascades. They're clearly engineered sequences, but engineered for what? Kira had spent the past 72 hours comparing the restricted sequences to the human genome, and what she'd discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about evolution. They're not mutations at all. They're switches genetic. Switches that can activate dormant capabilities. She brought up a holographic display showing the intricate molecular structures. Look at this sequence from the title species archives. It's been classified as a lethal mutation for millennia because it causes rapid cellular breakdown when activated. But when I compare it to human genetic markers, she overlaid the patterns and they matched perfectly. It's not a mutation. It's an unfinished adaptation. Elder Vex's breathing apparatus bubbled frantically. Unfinished how? Your species can survive in high-pressure water environments, but you can't transition to air breathing. This sequence would have allowed that transition, but it was never fully activated. It's like your ancestors were given the genetic tools for atmospheric adaptation, but the activation key was never provided. Dr. Moss creaked thoughtfully. Are you suggesting that ancient humans intentionally left genetic capabilities dormant in the species they seeded? More than that, Kira said, her excitement growing. I think they left safeguards. Look at the patterns across all our species. Every single one of you has genetic sequences that could theoretically allow for interspecies compatibility, shared communication protocols, environmental adaptations, even biological technologies. But they're all locked behind these supposed lethal mutations. The implications were staggering. Dr. Nex's compound eyes glittered as she processed the data. If these sequences could be safely activated, the barriers between our species would essentially disappear. We could share environments, perhaps even share biological structures. But why leave them locked? Asked Dr. Flux, the shape-shifting representative whose species had contributed the most mysterious genetic patterns to the archives. If ancient humans wanted to create a galactic community, why not simply provide the activation keys? Kira had been wondering the same thing, and she thought she'd found the answer in Earth's own archaeological record. Because they were running out of time. The Antarctic structures show signs of hasty abandonment. Whatever caused ancient human civilization to collapse, it happened fast enough that they couldn't complete their work. Or, Dr. Moss suggested, his ancient voice carrying a weight of possibility, they deliberately chose not to complete it. Perhaps they realized that true unity between species couldn't be imposed genetically. It had to be chosen. The room fell, silent as the researchers contemplated this possibility. The genetic archives contained the blueprints for a galactic civilization unlike anything currently imagined, species that could share worlds, communicate directly through biological channels, adapt to any environment together. But the keys to unlock these capabilities had been deliberately withheld. There's something else, Kira said quietly. The activation sequences, I found fragments of them in the human genome. Not complete sequences, but pieces, like ancient humans encoded part of themselves into their descendants, ensuring that the keys to galactic unity would survive even if their civilization didn't. Elder Vex's form rippled with what might have been hope or fear. Are you saying that modern humans carry the ability to activate these dormant capabilities in other species? I'm saying that modern humans carry part of the key. But I don't think any single human has the complete sequence. It would take multiple individuals working together to unlock the full potential of what our ancestors left behind. The implications were breathtaking. Ancient humans hadn't just seeded the galaxy with life. They'd created a puzzle that could only be solved through cooperation between their descendants and the species they'd helped create. A puzzle that would require trust, understanding, and unity to complete. The question is, Dr. Finn chimed softly, what happens when we find all the pieces? The search for the complete activation sequences consumed the next several months. Research teams fanned out across human settlements throughout the galaxy, collecting genetic samples from volunteers who carried the ancient markers. What they discovered challenged every assumption about human genetic diversity. The sequences aren't randomly distributed, Kira explained to the assembled council via holographic projection. They follow bloodlines, but not in the way we expected. It's as if ancient humans deliberately scattered different portions of the genetic keys across their population, ensuring that no single family line could activate the dormant capabilities alone. Elder Vex floated closer to his display screen. How many human contributors would be required to complete the activation sequences? For a basic activation, minimum 12 individuals from specific genetic lineages. But for full activation of all dormant capabilities across all species, Kira paused, double-checking her calculations. We'd need genetic contributions from at least 77 different human lineages. Dr. Moss creaked with what might have been amazement. Your ancestors truly intended this to be a collective effort. No individual could hold the power to transform the galaxy alone. The implications went far beyond simple genetic engineering. As the research teams had mapped the activation sequences, they discovered that the dormant capabilities weren't just about biological adaptation. The genetic switches would unlock cognitive enhancements, sensory expansions, and even what appeared to be latent psychic abilities that could facilitate direct mind-to-mind communication between species. We're not just talking about creating a more unified galaxy, Dr. Nex observed, her insectoid features clicking with concern. We're talking about fundamentally altering what it means to be a sentient being. The level of interconnection these sequences would create. It would essentially merge our species into something entirely new. That was the question that had been haunting Kira for weeks. The ancient humans had possessed the power to create a truly unified galactic civilization, but they'd chosen to make it conditional on the cooperation of future generations. Why? The answer came from an unexpected source. While analyzing the deepest layers of the genetic archives, Dr. Flux had discovered something that the other researchers had missed: a message encoded in the patterns themselves, written in the universal language of genetic sequences. It's a warning, Dr. Flux announced, his malleable form shifting colors with excitement. Or perhaps a test. The message is fragmented across multiple species archives, but when assembled, it tells a story. The message, when finally decoded, sent chills through every researcher in the project. To our children among the stars, we who scattered the seeds of consciousness across the void, leave you this choice. The power to reshape worlds and species lies dormant in your very essence, waiting for the moment when you prove worthy of its burden. We failed this test once, allowing unity to become uniformity, cooperation to become control. The capabilities we've hidden can create paradise or prison, depending on the wisdom of those who wield them. If you can gather willingly from across all species and all worlds, without coercion or conquest, then perhaps you have learned what we could not. The keys lie scattered among our descendants. Use them wisely, or not at all. The laboratory fell, silent as the full weight of ancient humanity's legacy became clear. They hadn't just seeded the galaxy with life, they'd created a final exam for their descendants, a test that could only be passed through genuine cooperation and trust between species. They're asking us to choose, Elder Vex said quietly. Not just whether to activate these capabilities, but whether we're mature enough as a galactic community to handle the responsibility. Kira stared at the genetic data flowing across her screens, seeing it now not as a scientific puzzle, but as a profound question about the nature of civilization itself. The activation sequences existed. The capabilities were real. But should they be used? We need to put this to a vote, she said finally. Not just among the research teams, but among every species, every world. If we're going to unlock humanity's gift to the galaxy, it has to be a decision made by everyone who will be affected by the consequences. The greatest test of galactic civilization was about to begin, and humanity's ancient legacy hung in the balance. The Great Referendum, as historians would later call it, took place over the course of one standard galactic year. Every sentient species, every inhabited world, every spacefaring civilization was invited to participate in the decision that would determine the future of biological life in the galaxy. The debates were fierce and passionate. Some species saw the activation of dormant genetic capabilities as the next logical step in galactic evolution. Others feared the loss of their unique identities in a homogenized future. Many questioned whether any generation had the right to make such a fundamental choice for all future generations. Kira found herself at the center of it all, traveling from world to world, explaining the science behind the ancient human legacy, while carefully avoiding advocacy for any particular position. The choice, as the message had made clear, had to come from genuine consensus, not persuasion or pressure. On the crystalline spires of Prism, she stood before the assembled council of reflected thought and watched as Dr. Finn's people debated through cascades of light and sound. Their conclusion was typically precise. The ancient humans have given us a gift that we must choose to accept or decline. There is no middle ground in this decision. The aquatic cities of the tidal worlds reached a different conclusion. Elder Vex spoke for his people with characteristic wisdom. We have thrived in our diversity, each species contributing unique perspectives to the whole. Perhaps the greatest gift would be to decline this transformation and prove that unity does not require uniformity. The debates continued across 17 different species, hundreds of worlds, and billions of individual voices. But as the year progressed, an unexpected pattern emerged. The younger generations of each species showed overwhelming support for activation, while the older generations urged caution. It was as if the galaxy itself was split between those who dreamed of transformation and those who feared the loss of everything they had built. In the end, the decision came down to a single vote from the most unexpected source, humanity itself. The human colonies, scattered across dozens of worlds, had been largely observers in the debate. After all, they were the newest members of the galactic community, the youngest spacefaring species. But when the final tallies were counted, every other species had voted, and the results were evenly split. The decision would rest with the descendants of those who had created the choice in the first place. Kira stood in the assembly chamber on the neutral world of Harmony, surrounded by representatives from every corner of the galaxy. The holographic vote tally showed the impossible. 8 species in favor of activation, 8 opposed, with humanity holding the deciding vote. The irony is not lost on us, she said, addressing the assembled delegates. Our ancestors created this choice to test the wisdom of future generations, and now their own descendants must make the final decision. The human delegation had debated for months. They carried the genetic keys that could unlock the galaxy's transformation, but they also carried the responsibility of honoring their ancestors' intent. The message had been clear. Unity achieved through cooperation was precious, but unity imposed through genetics was tyranny. We have decided, Kira announced, her voice carrying across the chamber and to billions of beings listening throughout the galaxy. Humanity votes to preserve the dormant sequences exactly as they are, available but not activated. We choose to honor our species' greatest gift to the galaxy, the freedom to choose our own path forward. The chamber erupted in a mixture of cheers and protests, but Kira continued. The capabilities will remain available to any future generation that achieves true consensus. But we believe that the greatest test of wisdom is knowing when not to use the power you possess. In the years that followed, the Great Referendum became the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization, one built not on shared biology, but on shared choice. The genetic archives were sealed but preserved, waiting for the day when all species might willingly choose transformation together. And on Earth, In the laboratories where it all began, researchers continued their work, knowing that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy was not the seeds of life they had scattered among the stars, but the wisdom to let those seeds grow in their own unique ways. The ancient humans had succeeded in their greatest test after all, not by creating unity, but by teaching the galaxy that the choice to remain diverse was just as valuable as the choice to become one. In choosing preservation over transformation, the galaxy had proven itself worthy of the gift that would forever remain available, waiting for the moment when it was truly needed and truly wanted by all. The DNA code that had started it all continued to flow through human veins, carrying the keys to galactic transformation. But perhaps the most human thing of all was choosing not to use them, trusting instead in the infinite possibilities that came from letting each species write its own genetic destiny among the stars.